Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, November 21st, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Directors. I'm Kathy Baum, President and Apartment Owners Representative. To establish quorum, I would like each director to identify him or herself and state their district representation, please. Let's start over here with you.
Karen Anton, Hunters Woods, Dogwood District.
Julie Bitzer, South Lakes District.
Doug Britt, at large.
Tom O'Karen, at large.
Eric Carr, at large.
John Mooney, North Point.
Okay, we have quorum. Thank you all. I just want to remind members of the board that if you have anything which might be a conflict of interest this evening, to please remember to state it before the vote. Before we get to the approval of the meeting agenda, I want to remind our two audience members who wish to speak this evening that we have two opportunities, and they come one after the other. The first is during regular member comments, in which we'll hear comments not related to the budget. And then the second opportunity is during the public hearing on budgets and assessment rates. If you intend to make comments, please make sure your name is on the sign-up sheet and the table outside. Okay, I need a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it is approved.
Right.
All in, I mean, we got a vote, right? All the ayes?
Aye.
Noes? Motion carries. Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Is there a second?
No, I have corrections.
I have a correction on the minutes.
Likewise.
Do I want to second it and then we get them?
I'll second.
Okay. And they are?
Mine's fairly easy. On the part on the conflict of interest, the yeses and the nos in the minutes. There was one that I had a different recollection and recording in my notes, and that was on 15. It was on number 4, which was the required director candidates for election and applicants for appointment also signed. And I had that,
Can you speak up, please?
sorry. This is in the conflict of interest policy revision. The last line item was deemed resignation, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on number 4, which was the required director candidates for elections and applicants also signed, I have that we had yes on that versus no.
My recollection is that we did not have applicants sign because of the chilling effect and but certainly after they, I think immediately after they were elected, we were going to have them sign. But we can go back and pull the tape if the board would like to defer these minutes and email me the question. We can pull the tape and get you an answer on that.
My recollection agrees with yours, Julie,
No, I know in
that it was
PG's
a consensus that candidates
yes.
and for the board and for membership positions be included, be required to sign it as candidates.
Now, I know in our subsequent BGC meeting, we
Right.
had another discussion about it, and I know we're going to come back
Okay,
to it.
I need everybody to remember that this is being recorded and they need to speak so everyone can hear.
I can't say for certain, but I'll defer to your recollection.
So that would be my change, is that number 4 should have been a yes. Sorry, that number 4 should have been a yes.
Is that it?
That was mine.
Karen?
This one might also require checking the tape. Counselor, it's item I, Lake Throw Pool. It mentions that a motion was made by Director Baum, but it does not indicate who seconded and what the vote was.
Oh, I probably did.
Okay, it seems to me that we have questions on the minutes, and consent calendar is supposed to go a little more quickly than that. So I don't know how to get somebody to pull back their motion, but it seems to me that we should take the approval of the board minutes off of the consent calendar and move it to,
So I move to amend the agenda to remove item C1, approval of board minutes from the consent calendar.
we have a motion on the floor of,
So procedurally, the movant must withdraw his motion to approve, or her motion, and then Eric's motion would be timely at that
Fair,
point.
yeah, you're right.
so who made the,
Original motion.
was it John?
John?
So will you withdraw?
I withdraw my motion.
Okay,
I move to remove item C1, item 1 from the consent calendar, item C on the agenda.
And
Until-
otherwise approve
And otherwise approve the agenda as amended.
for the.
but you're
consent
moving it to
calendar.
December.
I have to amend the agenda, and then we'll take that up and then move it to December. Am I doing right?
You're doing it in two steps, what you could do in one step, and just move to defer it to
I
the,
move to defer item C1 of the consent calendar to December. I realize I can be so efficient. I love government.
Second.
Good.
So, I say.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I know we have a conflict with the Board Governance Committee meeting scheduled for Thursday, January 2nd. Can we simply confer on a better date and make that change later?
They're going to look at the tapes.
that's a,
This is a different.
No, no,
this is a
She's
separate
looking
item.
at
Oh,
the
you're looking
meeting
at the election,
calendar.
oh,
The calendar, which is on the consent calendar.
Point of order, we need to vote on
Yeah.
Eric's motion,
That's right.
and
And then
then
we'll do that.
do the consent calendar.
Okay, sorry.
all in favor of moving it to December?
Aye.
Any noes? Abstentions? It carries. Okay. Now you're looking at the calendar and you have an issue with that?
The 2020 Board of Directors meeting calendar. I know that the Board Governance Committee meeting, which is the very first meeting of 2020, that we have some committee conflicts with that particular date. So,
My suggestion would be approve the calendar as presented. We will cancel that BGC meeting by unanimous consent of the BGC and call a special BGC meeting to make it up, as we've done in the past.
okay, that's fine. We haven't come up with a new date, so that's fine.
So I would,
We can approve
Okay,
it.
we can,
Now we can approve,
go for it, Eric.
I move to approve the consent calendar item number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, we are moving on to member comments. This is for any comments not having to do with the budget.
We're gonna do budget tonight? That's good. Asking for a friend.
Hold on just a sec. Is it list?
no one signed up.
You were looking at the wrong paper?
There's two.
Okay,
So let me sign up on page 2.
got it. Mr. Flashman, please step to the podium. State your name and address. You get 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Erwin Flashman. I live at 1327 Buttermilk Lane. You've all memorized that by now.
Close.
What I'd like to address this evening is very short, and It was already addressed before the board, either at the last meeting or the meeting before, which was done by the chair of the DRB with regard to the limits on terms, number of terms which members may serve. And the time is coming short, and the board has not done anything about it as far as I know. And it is not on the calendar, and I think it needs to be, and you need to consider it, because you are about to lose, I won't say hundreds of years, but lots of years of experience, and it is going to leave the board much less effective, much less useful, and much less accurate. And it's something important to the community to have a DRB that has the knowledge and the history. And if you don't have that, you've lost a great deal. And so I would urge you to take it up and consider the elimination of the restriction on the number of consecutive terms that a member of the DRB may serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Erwin.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, moving right along then. Do I have to wait until 7 o'clock for the public hearing? Since it was published to begin at 7?
I believe unfortunately, yes.
I amend the agenda to move item F ahead of item E. This will buy you 1 minute.
Second. In fact, should we,
I'm concerned with doing that in that we only have 2 people here who are ready to speak right now at the public.
To understand you much better if I can get familiar with the way you talk. I need your permission to help.
How did that happen? So I would vote against moving anything, and that we just take a break until 7 p.m. and see if anyone else shows up for the public hearing, who then might stay to hear the treasurer's report. That's how I would vote. Any other
I
comments?
think that's also reasonable. The treasurer report will be very
Could we do
minor.
item I? Strategic.
Well, I just think that we may, it's all up to you, but I think that we need to see if we're going to have any more people who might want to attend. This is a really important meeting. Yes, sir.
What about amending it to move into executive session to cover that portion of the meeting for the 20 minutes?
so move.
Will you withdraw?
Get it over with.
Will you withdraw?
I withdraw my motion.
John?
So move.
Second.
You move to go into executive.
I move what Tony just said.
Are we all tired?
We have a second. All
We
in
do have a
favor,
second.
say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay, we'll go into executive session.
Sorry, guys.
We are coming out of executive session.
Madam President, I move that the Reston Association Board of Directors certifies to the best of each member's knowledge that only those matters appropriate for executive session of a personnel, contractual, or legal nature or involving a violation of the association's governing instruments were heard, discussed, or considered by the board during executive session.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Are you a no or an abstention?
Abstention, because I just want.
Okay. Motion carries.
Madam President, I move to defer consideration of the appeal of the Covenants Committee decision for 2004 Hollyard Lane until the March 2020 Board of Directors meeting.
Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions?
Finally, I move that after a competitive bidding process and in accordance with the association's policies on purchasing and procurement, to approve the construction agreement with Hercules Fence Company as presented in executive session.
Second.
Eric, second.
It did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We still have 5 more minutes.
Move to take a recess. Propose a 5-minute recess.
Okay. All in favor, second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Motion carries. operating and capital budgets and 2020 assessment rate. I have one person here who's going to be speaking, Mr. Trina. You will come forward, state your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Bob Petrine. I live at 2503 Foxcroft Way in Reston. I have two questions and related comments to those questions. One related to the budget process and the other related to the strategic plan, and I'm asking them both at the same time since there's only one comment period today. And it's a question for the board. Does the board have access to the data supporting the 2020 budget? And the reason I ask this is, as I've read through the documents, the supporting documents for today's meeting, the questions that were posed by the fiscal committee suggest a bunch of questions that they don't seem to have answers to. And it would seem to me that if they don't have the answers to them, you may not either. And if you don't have those answers, I find it most difficult, given my background, that you could do an accurate job of budgeting for RA. So it's kind of an admonition, if nothing else.
Can you give some for instances, Bob?
Well, as I look at the financial reports, and I've looked at them for the last 3 years or so, if you look at the monthly financials that we get, it is difficult to understand what stands behind it. So if you look at one of the first items on the revenue, after you get past assessments, you look at communications. What does that entail? What does the revenue stream entail? And then what are the expenses associated with that revenue stream? If I were a director, I would expect to understand what that involves in terms of numbers of personnel, salaries, and so on, what that entails. And I would do that for everything that the organization does. It doesn't have to be extraordinarily detailed, but it would be something that I would expect as a director that I would need to know. And people do ask me questions, because I've raised these issues on financials before. So that's an example. The second is an observation about the strategic plan. It's a nice document. 18 pages long. It's really rather concise for a lot of the strategic plans that I've dealt with over the years. But it's only a nice document. I think to be a really, truly executable plan, and this is a suggestion, not so much a criticism, the KPIs have to be pushed down to the management the managers that are managing the programs, events, and so on. And in order to actually be executable. Because if people don't understand what the expectations of management are, they can't manage to those expectations. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Are you speaking, sir? No? Okay. Then I guess I will close the public hearing since we have nobody else to speak. Thank you both for being here. Yes, John?
I trust that sometime in the course of our budget discussion and strategic plan discussion, we'll address Bob's question.
Yeah.
I was, since there's nobody else here, I would expect at least periodically, maybe once every 6 months, that every program manager would be expected to report to the board on their progress against budget. Number of, like for the swimming pool, number of people, number of passes, uses of passes, the expenses attached to it, so that you could have you as board members could have reasonable conversations with the people that you see around town and are trying to understand what's happening. And it's one of those things that when you're dealing with imperfect information, it is very difficult to represent the organization as best you can when you don't have the information at hand to talk to people.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for the treasurer's report.
We do not have anything substantive to present for the treasurer's report that is not included in our budget discussion. And so I would propose that I yield back the balance of my time to the chair, and we move on to the next item. That said, I will take any questions from the board if they have questions about the treasurer's report that are not related to our budget discussion.
So Eric, implicit in that is that, for example, the year-end projections that appear in the draft 3 are ones that you agreed with
Yes.
and
Yeah.
therefore constitute a treasurer's report.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely right.
Okay. Item G on the agenda, the proposed 2020-2021 operating capital budgets and the 2020 assessment rate. Mr. Lynch.
To address your initial question about the budget, what you're looking at is an operating budget as opposed to a functional budget. And that's why the numbers that you're looking for don't back them up. We could, and Tom's in the background, we could put a functional budget together, but for some reasons we were asked to do it a little bit differently. So we can, as the board members at any time, can ask for every functional unit. And at the fiscal committee, we do give two separate sheets of functional. This is operations, a functional operational setup, as well as just a functional departmental setup, as well as an operational setup. But for this budget, we did not do that, mainly because we pulled the lake house out of it, which, am I speaking correctly, Tom? We pulled the lake house out of it to account for the lake house separately, which threw off the whole idea of how you do things by functional units. And that's why this operating budget doesn't include that. But if anyone needs it, we can put it together. It's really not a hard process at all.
Yeah, if I could, I back that up. The fiscal committee sees, the functional budget and the operational budget each month, and it's made available to all of the board of directors.
And indeed, yeah, the board saw the functional analysis earlier too.
Okay. Could you make that screen bigger, right behind you?
Want a new TV? Oh, bad.
I think I can. Try this. Did I do it?
That's perfect. Well, let me just go through the operational budget. You've all seen a lot of this material before. I'm not sure if everyone who's watching or who will see the tape has. So if you let me go through these slides, I think it would be helpful. So the RA strategic budget themes, how we put this budget together, are 5 basic themes. Maintain a clear focus on our mission, excel at providing exceptional quality service, position RA to continue retaining and attracting high-performing staff, and vigorously pursue new net non-assessment revenue, which I think was established as a new goal for the organization about a year ago, and make our hard budget decisions based on research and data. And my famous Ernest Hemingway kicking the can down the road picture is that we would like to avoid kicking the can down the road so other boards have to deal with budget issues in the future that we can deal with today. So those are the basic themes. We based this budget and including our strategic plan that will follow next, based on data used based on a lot of research. First and foremost, findings and recommendations of the staff compensation study, which many of you know is called the Archer Report, that clearly outlined some of our deficiencies, some of the things we needed to improve, and that has been included in this budget. We also, particularly myself, looked at staff turnover data and exit interviews from 2016 to present to understand why people were leaving, as particularly in 2018 timeframe. Board and SLT went through a strategic planning work project on multiple meetings between July and September 2019. And the BGC also has revised and the BOD approved a new vision, mission, or I should say a modified vision, mission, organizational aspirations, and the 2020-2022 strategic goals and objectives, which, to your point earlier, what you see in the strategic plan that's been put out does not drive all the way down to each of the goals that is driven to specific tactics that go out to every department. What's put in the document that we'll share here in just a little bit is really a little higher level just for the board, but it does go specifically down and drill down very deeply. And the RA member and community survey findings completed in September by the Brand Consultancy Group, and I'll share one or two of those of this in a future presentation coming up in a minute. And this is the one I'm going to show you. This, one of the pieces of data we received was to ask members what they wanted. What were some new tier member requests they wanted to have us add as services or programs or amenities? And if you can see, if you look at this chart, you'll see the first column indicates Reston residents, and the other one also indicates non-Reston residents. What you'll see here is a host of things, in some cases we're currently not doing. One of the top pieces was to have a food festival. Not necessarily that we're going to repeat some of the mistakes that have been made, let's say in Town Center with some of the food festivals that have been successful, but we have a good understanding of what folks are asking us for, including some new amenities. For example, if you look at the bottom there, it says a state-of-the-art gym and fitness center, which a lot of our competitors that are building around the toll road are doing. So we looked at all of this and put that together in this budget as well.
Hank, can I just say something?
Certainly.
So, just so everybody is clear, non-resident, they are people who do not live here, but they work and play here.
Yeah.
They participate in Reston.
And I'll also put a plug in for this whole research is being presented at 7 p.m. on December 4th, Wednesday, December 4th, for the board, and it's open to the public. So you'll just get more of this information at that time. We also looked at what's called an impact and effort matrix. Basically, we took the information we got from the membership, what they would like to see us do, and then we put this matrix together, and basically are looking at what we call quick wins that can have high impact. And that's what led to the projects that are in here, which include the improvements to the lake house. We're titling it the Yurt, which was the education, the facility that would help us do education and camps that take that work currently, or that exercise currently out of the lake house. Watercraft, boat rentals, the amenity sponsorship. And one thing that's listed up there says Parks on Tap, which is an interesting program that's being run in Philadelphia that's generated an enormous amount of money. We've used that as simply as a placeholder title, but basically what that project is in Philadelphia, they were encouraging through offering food, beer, micro beer, and music for people to visit every park in Philadelphia. And it's generated an enormous amount of revenue for the Parks and Rec Department. Our Parks and Rec Department discovered this and think that we could do something similar to it. Probably would not be called Parks on Tap, but the idea of getting our folks here in this community to experience all our parks and all our open space is a really good concept, and that's why it's on there. If you look, so anything above the line of things we were focusing on it, and we're calling quick wins in that upper left-hand quadrant. The upper right-hand quadrant, the only thing we have listed here right now is Lake Thoreau Pool, which means it's important, but it's going to take a lot of time and money. So these other things on the left-hand side are why they're included in this year's budget. The bottom right quadrant are things that are a waste of time. So the idea we threw out there, should we have a location and lake and storefront for leasing and extended membership? After testing it, hearing feedback, we put it in that bottom right-hand quadrant, which means it's basically going to have very little impact and cost us a lot of money. So that's why that's there. And this is what we do with every program new program that's being developed. Moving on, some of the noteworthy points in the budget. The average annual assessment increase during the 10 budgets from 2010 to 2019 has been 4%. Plan 2020 assessment increase is currently proposed at 2%. This equates to a 708 is the proposed assessment. This is a $15 increase over 2019, roughly 4 cents per day. Partial implementation of the staff compensation study recommendations by the Archer report is in this budget. Total adjustments are inclusive of the 401k in 2020, and they all total up to a little over $601,000. That's in the budget. Increased total authorization of staff positions. This has been presented before as a total net of five people. And you can see where they're listed. They're in covenants, which is to help us with our customer service and covenants area, and the DRB side of things, IT staff, social media staff, and the business engagement and sales management manager who is helping us with sponsorship, raising the sponsorship dollars we're looking for. And sponsorship and other new 2020 non-assessment revenue totals over $450,000 in this budget. And so, budget revenue highlights. Covenant's revenue budget is budgeted conservatively at $285,650. This is about a 4.5% below 2019 actual, and based on the fiscal committee's recommendation, we upped this amount. It was a little bit lower. Covenants took a second look at it, and we brought the number up based on fiscal committee's advice. New communication revenue exceeds $200,000. This is the sponsorship piece of it, and there was some question of whether or not we were going to be able to meet this goal. Just to put it in perspective, the business engagement and sales manager was hired about 6 months ago. Spent the last 6 months going around communicating and meeting with the community. To date, they have already secured significant sponsorship, including sponsorship of this space. So we're very confident they're going to hit that goal. Camp revenue grows more than $50,000 based on some of the new camps we're offering, extended hours, and that sort of thing. Enhancement of existing activities at the lake house with camps, Lake Ann, and pickleball generate $275,000 in new non-assessment revenue as part of this budget. And Walker Nature Center grows revenue 25% by offering full-day camps, and historically they've only been offering half-day camps. So in a nutshell, a lot of things we're doing in this budget, especially in the non-assessment side of the equation, are basically enhancing things we're already doing. So we are very, very comfortable and confident in the number that we presented here. Noteworthy, though, to keep in mind, many of you are aware that we had a one-time tenant improvement dollar savings from the new lease we've negotiated on this building. And we are not including that in the operating budget. This is a $426,000 in one-time savings. Our management's recommendation is, and it will follow, we have at the end of the budget presentation, we are recommending that an account be established where monies like this, end-of-the-year funds, can be moved into a secure board-directed account to address future RRF, PARF, and other board-designated future needs. We don't believe we need this money. We do not need this amount of money right now to make this budget work. This is the budget. You have it in your packet. It's really not changed a whole lot since the 2A version, which was presented a couple of weeks back. It actually came down about $1 in the total assessment. It came down from 709 to 708. Budget highlights, expense highlights. Computer support expense has increased $418,000. All of you, I believe, are aware. We informed you of the issues we've had with our computer, with our basically our file servers and our data. This $418,000, if you drill into the details of it, has a lot to do with revamping our entire system, which is antiquated and indeed has failed. And in respect to our new IT director, they've indicated that it's been underfunded for quite some time, and that's why we lost the data about 2 months ago, about 6 weeks ago, I should say. Aquatics expense will increase $77,000. This represented a 10% increase. This is where a lot of our expenses are. In fact, a significant amount of our expenses are with our pools. It represents a little bit of a pay increase for our lifeguards, and it also involves increases in chemical costs and maintenance costs of all of our 15 pools. Overtime is forecast to be $192,000 in 2019, and it'll be a similar number in 2020. Again, this basically surrounds our aquatics and the fact that the staff that we have to hire to make the pools work. Staff training and development expenses increased from $35,000 to $70,000, and this has to do with requests by staff and as well as certification that folks need to maintain, and the fact that over the last several years, this has been an underfunded line item. Many functional expenses such as facility repairs, materials and supplies, and electrical supplies are all budgeted to increase. Much of this has to do with previous budgets that basically have not funded them to the point where they need it to be funded in order to maintain the assets that we have. And new since last draft, the expense budget is set with all new hires starting no sooner than March 1st. This again was a fiscal committee recommendation, which we have embraced. So this is the budgeted expense column, which you all have on your sheets. And finally, it shows where the assessment will land, which is at 708, and at a 2% increase, which I've already shared with you. And finally, I would simply ask either for discussion or to move to approve the 2020 operating capital budget as presented.
I need a motion before we have discussion. Eric?
I move to approve the 2020-2021 operating and capital budgets as presented.
Is there a
Second.
second? Karen, did you second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Julie?
Question about the start date as March 1st for all new hires.
Yes.
We had a number of positions that you were actively seeking to fill. Are those any offers made at this point are still valid?
As you know, a budget is simply a plan. And so if we have the right person and we're going to lose them, we will certainly bring them on. But right now, we've asked all the departments to do their recruitment and look for their people and see if they can't have a start date on March 1st. If we're going to lose the top candidate, we will make adjustments and make the budget work at the end of the year.
So I have a problem with giving staff that direction. In my previous life, when I did a budget, if I knew what 100% of a staff cost was going to be for the year, I took out 15 or 18%, but I did not stop any department head from hiring unless we had some kind of a freeze for some reason. And if you end up at 90%, well, you come and ask for forgiveness. But generally, I always believed in my corporate life that you never spent 100% from day one, whether it was because of attrition, of people taking leaves of absence, variety. So I would hate for staff to think that they can't bring somebody on and that they don't have the support of the board to bring people on. If a department needs people today, we need to be hiring them today. So that's I agree with Julie, I had a problem with that statement.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I got a complete answer. So if we have offers out today, you are planning to still bring them on board? You're not going to wait till March?
If we have offers out today and they are the right candidate. However, what we discovered, this in the year I've been here, it usually takes 2 to 4 months to bring on the right person.
All right.
And so we believe that the number will hold, the budget will hold, the savings will hold. And all we've technically said is we'd like to hold it until March 1st. And we use that as a calculator for Tom so that he could adjust the budget down, because that's what we were asked to do by fiscal. But it's basically helping us adjust the budget. Yeah.
So this was fiscal committee's recommendation to do essentially what you are describing. As a budgeting artifact, don't assume you're gonna hire them all on January 1st, it's November 21st, we won't do that. On average, you may get to where you have 80 to 85% of that budget spent this year, just based on the time to bring people on board. And so fiscal's recommendation to staff was, as you prepare this,
Can you go
assume they start on March
backwards?
1st. In the aggregate,
Can you go backwards?
which assume they start on March 1st in the aggregate.
Well, I guess-
Fiscal could have said, use 85% for this year to the same effect. That their term of art was, for budgeting purposes, start on March 1st, but they were attempting to do what Kathy describes.
Right, well, I mean, we have one department head back there, Anna, who's been authorized to hire people in design review board, and I don't want her to have to wait until March 1st.
I believe those
And
are
I don't
separate.
think,
Well, that's why I asked my
Those
question.
are fully loaded, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're good to go. I can assure
Those
you-
are fully loaded. These are the new positions.
Yeah.
okay,
I
I'm
can
just,
assure you, no department head is gonna go without their people.
Yeah.
It's just, if you factor this in, Tom needed a metric to do the budget. Fiscal gave us a good recommendation, and when you look at the true logistics of bringing people on, it's all gonna wash out at the end.
I'm okay with the concept of, for budget purposes, that you use that as a start date because it makes the numbers work. I just was, my flag, went up when which I guess I haven't, it's another slide, with the statement that said, that you, all new hires start no sooner than. So it was more like, well, that isn't what I thought we,
It's a budget artifact.
Yeah, it's a budget artifact, and you have to understand, fiscal made the suggestion, we had to use some way to calculate it.
Yeah, I get
And it made
that.
sense, that's all this is indicating.
okay.
Just to speak up, I associate myself with Julie and Kathy's
And that, as do
position.
I.
Yeah.
That's the one, yeah.
Okay.
any other comments on the, I'm sorry, Hank, you're done, right? You're just
done. Let's-
waiting for us, okay, Ben.
I have to say, I think this board has failed miserably in putting the checks and balances on the staff that you ought to do. Right now, the staff can say just about any amount that they want, because that's what this budget is a wish list and a desire list, and they've got everything they wanted, because you're not done the due diligence to look at the budget and ask the hard questions. You've not even looked at any of the fiscal committee recommendations. The only artifact from the fiscal committee in the last 2 years has been the fiscal committee recommendation that came out in the last meeting. And many of the board members have not even looked at it.
How
So
do you
you're
know?
blaming,
Hack-
hold
you
on,
hack
hold
our
on.
system? How do you know that?
Well, because,
You're just using words. How do you know that?
Well-
You've accused 7 people here of
Absolutely.
not doing their homework.
well, because you're not
Present
even,
proof or withdraw the
you're
statement.
not even in meetings, Eric,
I
so
read every damn thing that comes to me. I am absolutely
You're not
involved
present in the
with everything.
meetings.
I've been to more meetings than you have, then.
Oh, terribly not, definitely not. You've been absent,
Gentlemen,
you've been an absent
You
treasurer
withdraw
all year.
You withdraw your comments.
gentlemen,
Absolutely not, in your face.
Hey, child.
Ben,
you
you are out of order. Eric, come on, guys.
So let me continue my comments before I was rudely interrupted. Yes, absolutely, I'm accusing the board, and I'm saying you guys need to grow a spine and be able to stand up to what the staff asked for and be able to ask the hard questions, which you have not done. You've not gone through a single recommendation that was presented by the fiscal committee. You've totally blown them off. And none of that has, let alone been agreed upon, has not even been considered. Okay? Now, many of you have run again for the board by saying, oh, this decision, let's take the lake house, for example. You said, well, I wasn't on the board when that happened, or I was against it before I was for it. But a lot of these decisions that you're making is going to blow up in your face, and it's on your hands because you didn't do your job. And finally, I want to take one more item to the membership, which is never a good thing for a person in elected position to take that back to their constituency, but I have to tell you this, that I hold you responsible for not having the proper checks and balances in place. Last year, we had 2 people in our budget listening session. Look over here today, we have 4 people. And we have 22,000 members in our membership. And we have 4 people, 2 people. The year before that, there were 4 people. I think if you come up when your neighborhood pool is about to shut down, or when your favorite facility is in jeopardy, or facilities being cut off, then you're not thinking about the community. You're reacting to your own interests. And therefore, I'll say, as of today, the biggest threat to Reston is lack of membership participation. And unless you show up to the meetings and ask the questions, because I'll tell you, if this room had been filled up and you all asked the right questions, because we just heard about how $400-some thousand was asked for IT spending, and the disaster from which we did not recover our data happened in the last month was because enough funds was not allocated. I can tell you that is simply not true. All your data might be a few gigs and it takes pennies to store that. So it's definitely not cost being put in the right place. So that's just one of the many examples. And if you don't have a pulse on the spending, then you are not doing your part of the responsibility that you need to. So I will definitely not approve and accept this budget, but it's a matter of principle that you all participate and ask the hard questions.
John?
Then your comments trouble me and sadden me, because I know how hard I work.
Point of order, I don't want any crosstalk and people addressing other people.
No,
I was just
that's
addressing
appropriate.
about the
I will-
budget. What's there to talk
I
about
will
my
address,
opinion
I will
about
address the
something?
chair.
I mean, if you're going to catch each other on one person's opinion, you're not even allowed to express it. I already had somebody else catch me on what I wanted to express. Now we have another person. So we have the board ganging up on one person if they have to express something about what's going on with the budget.
Stop.
You're not in any position to tell me to
Thank you.
stop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not a time for the whole board, one by one, to go around and say how much time they put into it or how much time we've spent on it, but I'm going to do it a bit. I not only have studied all of the reports of the fiscal committee, I've asked the financial department and the CEO to answer their specific questions. I've done my own spreadsheets, as they know, to examine what the staff is represented versus what fiscal is represented. When it comes to, for example, one of the big budget items this year, the compensation study, I replicated their regression analysis to see if it was correct. I've done studies on this. I've spent more than a week and a half, a full week and a half, examining that. And I've done that, and others can say what they've done, but I've spent an enormous amount of time, bugged the hell out of staff, as they know, and as Kathy and Eric know about the compensation study, to try to get to the bottom of it. So it is very sad that that amount of work on all our parts is being called into question. And what I would ask the citizens is just dispassionately study the facts, inform yourselves of the facts, and if you have questions, demand answers of us. Demand answers of us. But I can only speak for myself, but I know secondhand how much some of my other colleagues on the board have put into this. We work very hard to do this right.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Julie?
The only thing I would say is, and I know I have been, I've received a number of phone calls from members. I've met with members across not only my district, but others. And I have tried to make sure that I understood both positions, multiple positions, on what's interpreted from the numbers that we receive. So I, like John, feel that I am doing my due diligence and I am doing my fiduciary responsibility as an RA director. I do agree with them that it would be great to have more participation from our members, but I also think that in the last number of years, we've done a much better job at reviewing our numbers and understanding what our numbers are. And that's both from a program and a functional standpoint. So I'm pleased with the progress that I've seen in this year, and I have been through multiple budget exercises. So, and I'm glad we have a fiscal committee to ask questions. So there you go.
Anybody else? Does anybody have any questions about the budget? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I was running late today, and that's what if I just could ask a few?
Certainly, come up, state your name. You've got 3 minutes. Name and address.
Jennifer Juszczyk, 2010 Upper Lake Drive. The few that I have are for 2021. I know that we're not, that we're going to redo that budget, but I'd love to see the strategic plan items that are on the list built into that budget, which some of them are an increase in revenue on the sponsorship side. I'd love to at least see that because it would make the assessment number go down. 2 is for the IT costs. I don't think anyone's going to argue that we have some IT issues, but I'd love to see the board review at a future meeting what that IT plan is, what they're going to spend those dollars on, because it is a significant increase. And then on the capital side, I'd love to see, I'd love to ask, is it possible, do we have the manpower to spend this $4 million in 12 months? Because it's a very large number that we haven't spent traditionally in many, many years. And I would hate to give the staff a ton of money and stress them out if they don't have the manpower to spend it. And that may mean that we need to spend more money on consultants to help them spend the money if that's what we need to do to get our amenities going. I don't know what that answer is, but those are my comments. Thank you, and sorry again, I was late.
Thank you. Any other comments on the budget? Mr. Mooney?
I would like to make some comments about the capital budget, which Jennifer brought up. And I too was concerned about, can we actually pace ourselves to spend the money that we're budgeting? And so we've asked questions, and I've privately asked questions of Chris Shoemaker, and there's no doubt we're behind. There's no doubt we're behind. But we have progressed in terms of the number of projects completed from 33 in fiscal 2017 to 46 in 2018 and 78 by October of this year. So in just one measure is the number of projects. That has been steadily increasing under Chris's great leadership. In terms of money, we have been spending averaging about, and catch me if I'm wrong on this, Chris, about $3.2 million in previous years, each year in previous years. We are currently forecasting to clear $3.4 million this year, which is a small increment. But I think I have a question which I've raised with Hank and with Chris, is do we have the horsepower in Chris's department to pace our improvements as we need them paced? Because if we don't maintain properly, the costs of maintenance and repair will go up. And I think that is something that I would like to see the board examine next year, is whether we need to add more horsepower. Because we're not saving money when we don't spend this maintenance and repair fund. We're incurring greater costs. And so I think, again, I commend Hank and Chris and Chris's crew with the support they get from the rest of staff for the improvements. But I share your concern that our pace is not what it needs to be, in my view.
Can I just address that a little bit? Chris, welcome to jump in as well. They will need more people down the road. The issue with some of the funds that aren't being spent have nothing to do with not trying to spend them. We are, you can just see all the cranes out here right now. We're in a high demand area for a lot of these projects. So it may be that things are delayed for getting the right contractors, things are delayed on materials, or for other matters that are making it slower. But Chris and his staff this year, as you can see, are doing an incredible job. So those are things we cannot factor in, whether or not a contractor is going to sign on or whether materials are not going to be available. So what we have budgeted, there's no calculus for that. So what we have budgeted is what Chris and his team have identified that we need to go forward based upon the plan. And Chris, if I've misspoken, please come forward.
Yeah, John and I have spoken at length about this subject. There is a lot of work to do out there, and it's not going to get any better. But as we've been doing in the last couple of years, our department's still pretty young. We've only been around for about 3 years now, I think. And so we've been progressively getting more efficient as we go along. We're finding better ways of doing business. We're trying to find more ways of expediting the process faster by lumping projects more together, by creating multi-service year contracts to then help kind of expedite the work and get someone basically on a retainer, if you will, in some cases, to then keep them with us. Because the biggest problem right now is that you get a project, you let them go, and then they get swamped with about 4 months worth of work, and then you're fighting to get them back. We're dealing right now with our marine services contractors. Like we got him on the hook, but he's getting pulled away with other jobs, so it's a constant battle to keep it moving. But yes, I mean, as we continue to age, our infrastructure gets older, it may come a time where we do need to get some additional manpower in here. My guys are great. They know a whole lot about Reston. I think combined they have like 60 years worth of experience, but at the same time, the work doesn't stop. So we have to keep moving forward, and our plan is to try to always clear as much as we can in the year that we're funded. Things always come up, weather, supplies, many different things come up. But we are doing better, and I think we can continue to get better right now.
Just one other, to address the question about the IT expense, I think what would be the smart thing for me to do, because I'm not an IT expert, in fact, if you ask the folks in the room, they'd say I'm not even IT, I don't even know what it means. We will have the IT director at the next meeting, and she will outline specifically what has to happen, what caused the problems we have, what are the problems we've inherited that have been going on for the last several years. Clara will be there, and she'll be able to speak very intelligently about why this expense is needed at this time.
Okay, I am going to vote to approve this budget. I have reached out to board members and asked if they had comments that they wanted to share with me. I have attended fiscal meetings. I have reviewed all of fiscal's questions, as well as a past treasurer of the board who has made comments to us. And I have met with Hank on numerous occasions to go through this budget, and I am very comfortable. I have complete trust in the staff that they are going to come to this board with their proposals to get approvals for individual projects that are new projects, that they will be justified, and if the board disapproves them, the board will disapprove them for sound reasons. So I'm going to vote in favor of this budget. Any other comments? Karen?
I just want to say, having been through the budget process last year, granted it was a mid-year, but it was still pretty comprehensive, as I recall. I just want to compliment my fellow board members and staff and Hank and the fiscal committee, because I feel so much more informed this year than I did last year. So I just want to express my appreciation for that.
If there are no other comments, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any noes?
Absolutely not.
Abstentions? Motion carries.
I have one more item I'd like to bring up, and Tony can help me with this with a motion. We are suggesting, and this is in your packet, it's on your slide as well, that we're looking at cash. This cash was brought up by the fiscal committee in talking with our finance department and others about the complexities of what we face when it comes to cash. We are proposing the following. During the budget process, when projected cash on hand, this before collection of year-end deferred revenue, is positive, an amount recommended by the Director of Finance and ultimately approved by the Board of Directors will be placed in a secure interest-bearing account and used at the sole discretion of the Board of Directors to address RRF, CARF, and/or assessment relief at a time and for a budget year they deem necessary and appropriate. We're suggesting that because if I go to the next slide, this is our RRF minimum balance challenge we have going on for the next 5 years. And these are the rules we have to follow by. Fiscal shared with me the other night that they only want to look at functional budgets and that they're dealing it from numbers. What I've learned in running Reston Association is that not only do we have to look at the functional budget, we have to look at the operations. We have to look at the political piece of it, what the community wants, and also the rules and directions our general counsel clearly points out to us constantly. Right now, we have rules that say we need to carry a minimum balance. Those rules could at some time be changed, but right now, this is how we operate. And so it's recommended by the finance department, by the CEO, and by the senior management of the organization that we look at a way to take cash at the end of the year, the finance director says is available, and put it into an account that this board can use to support whatever, RRF, CARF, or assessment abatement, or anything else they deem is appropriate at a time they deem is appropriate. So that's what I'm proposing. I don't know, Tony, you have a motion? Is there a motion?
There is, yeah, there is.
Yeah. So,
If I could, so this addresses a couple things that have come up in the fiscal committee and among the fiscal committee members over the last 2 years. The first is the question of our year-end cash balance and how we forecast that, first of all, and then how much is appropriate to keep in reserve in case, dues don't get paid until, toward the end of the dues window, or more people don't pay dues than we expect not to pay dues. So that cushion was one of the questions. And the second question is the current rules in terms of the minimum funding of the RRF. And so this is a solution that helps us mitigate both of those until such time as we can address the aspect of the minimum funding of the RRF, which we're going to do in the next year, and also to give us a little more security with that cushion at the end of the year. So this is something that, this may seem like a complicated thing with some moving parts. This is something that has been many months and many hours of work in the making by a number of your volunteer RA members and committee members.
Madam President, I will vote for when the motion is made, I will vote for it.
Okay, why don't you wait until the vote
Okay,
motion is
well,
made?
let me mention a couple of, let's make the motion and then we'll discuss.
Mr. President, I move to direct staff to establish a secure interest-bearing account to be funded with end-of-year cash on hand, which specifically excludes any income received for the subsequent year's assessment, which may only be debited by decision of the Board of Directors to address RRF, CARF, and/or assessment relief hereinafter designated as the board discretionary fund.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. John?
As has been mentioned, as you've mentioned, Madam President, we've received a number of reports and analyses from the Fiscal Committee. We received a lengthy and fairly detailed analysis from John Higgins, one of our former treasurers. And I really tried to study those two very carefully. I threw their numbers into my own spreadsheets and compared them, and I came up with two conclusions. One is that all parties are not dealing with the same set of numbers. There is a real confusion about which numbers are accurate. I think we've made some advance this year, but I think, and Tom and I have worked on this by email and in a meeting this week, trying to simplify the numbers so that we all can get to a common set of numbers to talk about. But one of our problems is we do not have a common set of numbers. And they're very complex, so it's not because people are stupid, it's because it's complex, what these various numbers are and how they interrelate with one another. The second thing that I've concluded is there are a number of issues. We've not even identified we've not clearly identified and agreed on the questions we want to ask about those numbers. There is a question between the relationship between a sound budget in which revenues equal expenditures and a sound cash flow in which cash on hand is adequate to pay expenditures. And the relationship between those two has caused some of the confusion. Secondly, one way to understand the Fiscal Committee's disagreement with staff, as I believe, is do we need both belt and suspenders? By belt, I mean RA's very sound general fiscal health, or do we need belt and suspenders, so additionally 1 month operating cash? So that's a discussion, which we've not identified the questions and agreed on the questions to ask the numbers, which we don't have either. So there are questions, do we need a separate cash reserve? And if so, what are the fiscal financial vulnerabilities that create that need? What is the recent history of year-end operating surpluses, and what do they tell us about the reality of this perceived need? And we need to know why we have surpluses. The very fact of surplus does not give us the answer. We have to know why. Is it because we've over budgeted expenses? Is it because some expenses, either by diligence or by luck, have gone away in the course of a year? Is it because we have one-time revenues? Is it because we now have an ongoing stream of revenue we hadn't anticipated? So we have to know why we have surpluses. I think we've made real progress this year, but I think I think we're in a position now, we've talked to each other enough, the Fiscal Committee and the board and staff, that next year we can get even a more refined take on this.
Excellent point.
Ben?
So we had a fiscal committee meeting yesterday, and many of you were present in there. And there's only one motion that you can say came from the fiscal committee, which is what came to you in the last meeting. in a written form. It was a motion that was passed unanimously by the fiscal committee and was presented to the board. And that recommendation from the fiscal committee was that we have 1.4 million in surplus, that we move 369,000 out of that and give that back to the membership towards the assessment. That is the only truth. So stop taking the fiscal committee's name to push your agenda, because what you mentioned in the motion was nowhere what fiscal committee mentioned. It is your opinion, and do not take the fiscal committee's name to push what you want to happen. This is another example of the staff wishing for something to happen to set up a secure fund and the board falling in line.
Well, we haven't voted on it yet, so I don't know that the board has fallen in line. Any other comments? So for a change, I'm going to agree with them. Because I have been at fiscal committee meetings, and I do know what they say, and I do read their materials. And they did express concerns over the past couple meetings about this very topic. So I'm going to vote against it, because I do think that I personally need to spend more time studying the topic. Anybody else have anything before I call for a vote? Julie?
My question is, we don't have to pass this tonight. We could pass this, this motion in a month, right? Nothing that, the money that we are suggesting, that is being suggested, be put into this, I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right document.
The discretionary,
Or the
it's not
discretionary.
time sensitive, that's correct.
Yeah. Nothing's happening to that money at the moment. It's just gonna be, right now, it's just gonna be sitting there, right? So the only question is, what happens to that money? Whether or not it goes in some fashion back into how the fiscal committee might have thought, or it goes into this newly designated fund. My thought is that we have done some kicking the can down the road on some of our major projects. And I am concerned that we haven't truly, because we chose, the boards in the past couple of years, have chosen not to really take a hard look at some of our infrastructure costs and our amenity costs and whatever. And as we've heard already from Chris and Hank tonight, those costs have gone above what is even in the most recent reserve study because of the very nature of the market that we're competing in. So I'm not ready to say, I think we ought to give the money back. But I don't know whether or not, back to John's point, are we all comfortable that we're talking the same language and asking the same questions? I know last year about this time, we, made a decision to keep X amount of money on hand. But as I've learned more this past year, and this is kudos back to both having a fiscal committee and us taking a little bit more time and delving into things both through the treasurer and through Tom as our lead financial officer. I'm not 100% clear that I know all that I feel I should know. So I'm kind of in between this two camp, and so my question is, should this be deferred a month while we get a better sense of this being proposed to us? Because fiscal was only last night, we're not quite ahead, so my preference would be to allow us another month to look at this particular question.
Doug?
Well, I guess I'm a little confused because the motion says we put this into a interest-bearing account, and then we can make a decision later on whether to give it back
That's
and
true.
use it for
Can we
deferment or use it.
Amendment back up?
Correct.
So to me, it makes sense that we put it into an account where we gain some interest,
Until,
because the decision is still the board. Do we
Right.
use it to defer assessments, reduce assessments, or do we use it for?
that's true.
In your packets, it is page, scroll, bear with me here.
Is it right?
It is page 24 of 86, yeah.
Oh, no, not quite.
In the PDF version, it's 24 of 86.
Well, the only thing is, this is putting in a policy in place for all years, not just this year.
Madam Chair, point of order. That is not the motion that
Oh.
you have. The motion that you have is not in the packet. I drafted it today.
All right, so it's not the one on page 24?
It is
It's
correct.
similar.
It's similar. The intent is
Yeah, okay.
there's going to be a account created, interest bearing, that only the board of directors can debit.
Right.
And it's going to be called the board discretionary fund.
I can read it again if that would help.
Yes, please.
So the motion was move to direct staff to establish a secure interest-bearing account, so a savings account, that sort of thing, to be funded with end-of-the-year cash on hand, which specifically excludes any income received for subsequent years' assessments, so not incoming assessment dollars, which may only be debited by decision of the Board of Directors to address triple RF, CARF, or assessment relief, hereinafter designated as board discretionary fund. So once we move things to the savings account, it can be taken out for triple RF, CARF, or assessment relief at the board's discretion.
Ben, can you refresh us on what the fiscal committee said about cash on hand?
So what they said was that we have 1.4 million. The exact numbers are in that document, but 1.4 million is where it is the lowest when we collect monies and spend monies through the cycle of the year, and that we don't give all of it, but we give 25% of it over the next 4 years and assess it as we go on how that's working out. And therefore, they came up with a number of approximately 369,000 to be offset towards next year's assessment.
Madam Chair, may I comment a little bit? 1.4 at the end of the year, we have internally would like to have a 1-month cushion. Our 1-month cushion is 1.33 million.
That's what you need, yeah.
So consequently, if you take 1.33, and I think you have a sheet that shows it, I don't have it to show up
Page
there.
38 in the electronic board packet.
So basically, it leaves at the end of the year, if you factor that in, we need a 1-month cushion, you basically have $240-some thousand at the end of the year.
Currently 100,000 based on the current projection.
If you also look at some of the other things that were suggested, information that the fiscal committee either doesn't understand or understand about our finances, is that by keeping a certain amount of money in the bank, we pay minimal to no fees. You start to pull that out, we have to pay fees. The logistics of doing what was suggested by fiscal committee of paying money back, we have no idea how to do it. It more than likely would require adding another staff or another seasonal staff or some additional computer work. So we believe that this gives you the most flexibility to do what needs to be done with these funds. You have complete control over it. It's a policy. You can get rid of the policy at any time. Right now, what staff is looking for is a safe way and an appropriate way to put this money in a quote-unquote a box that this board controls. That's all we're looking to do. The other issue that's coming up has to do with the rent abatement for this building. It is not being paid out in cash. So it's not, we're not getting a check for it. Basically, it's tenant improvements. So we're looking to only do a small amount of tenant improvements and save the rest. That money can either go toward, and that money has to be accounted for by September of 2020. We would like to take that money and account for it. It's $400-some thousand I've mentioned.
Or 26.
Basically take savings on that for the rest of the year and take the cash that's in the budget now to cover that rent and put it into the same account. If you go to this next slide, the one I showed you over here, if you add those two numbers together, it comes up to roughly $600-and-some thousand. If you look at this number that currently our rules say we have to have as a minimum balance in triple RF, it's $864,000. So by doing what we're suggesting, gives you the tools next year to address more than 2/3 of this. So that's what we're saying. This is a problem that I am trying to deal with, the staff is trying to deal with, and the fiscal committee and the finance department is trying to deal with. It is not a simple functional budget issue. It is not just a number issue. There are complexities here going on in how we function that until the rules change, we have to operate this way. That's why the general counsel is next to my office every day, coming in telling me what I can and cannot do, and pulling out the green book and telling me what I can and cannot do. And a lot of this stuff, the fiscal department, the fiscal staff doesn't understand, fiscal committee doesn't understand, because they're also working. This is complicated. It's taken me a year to get a good understanding and a grasp of all these things. We've got a CPA who's running the department, there's a CFO, we've got several other qualified people on staff, and we have put this together because we believe this is the best thing for Reston Association and gives you the most flexibility going forward. That's all.
I'm going to say again, I'm not opposed to this. I'm not for it. I personally am going to vote against it because I want to study it more to make sure I really am clear. Because when you start looking at where your numbers go screwy, you might spend more in tenant improvements than you're planning now. You might spend a lot less, which would mean you'd have a whole lot more money. So I have to wrap my brain around it, so I'm gonna vote no. Yes, counsel?
I just want to make the board aware of one procedural issue. If this is voted down tonight, it will take a 2/3 vote to rescind the board's decision if we want to bring it back. So if we're voting no for time, then the appropriate vehicle will be a motion to defer.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
So just,
which is what I was trying to ask about.
But we have a motion on the floor.
So it could be pulled
I
back.
can withdraw my motion if we want to do this in December.
you could,
I would like to defer it to December's meeting.
you could table the issue for this meeting and it can be taken up and
Yep, I'm fine with that.
What does that do to the budget that we're about to enact? Anything?
No, has no effect.
Which is what
This
I
is
was
not,
asking.
this is not time sensitive.
Right.
This would
It's
impact
interest
next
sensitive,
year
but that's it. Yep.
if we chose assessment reduction.
But your money,
Next year.
this money doesn't go in until till January 1.
Right.
But
But I mean, if the board chooses to use it for assessment reduction, that would be 2021.
Yeah, I'm fine with tabling it. It's not time sensitive.
so are you going to withdraw your motion?
I withdraw. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move that we table this decision until the December board meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Oh, my bad,
Item H, you're back up.
Okay.
Yeah, it says time links right there.
Okay, this should go fairly quickly. Can you all of you have in front of you a draft copy of the strategic plan. It's also been put online.
No, we've got to
We've
do the assessment.
The assessment resolution.
Yeah.
Oh,
Then we'll
that's
do
me.
this.
I'm sorry, it's me.
You're going to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's us. Eric.
Madam President, I move to approve the proposed amendments to Assessment and Finance Resolution 2, Assessment Rates and Collection Procedures, thereby establishing $708 for the 2020 annual assessment rate, as well as installment plan fees, collection fees, and respective due dates for 2020 as delineated the amended Exhibit A of Assessment and Finance Resolution 2, Assessment Rates and Collection Procedures.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All against?
No.
Motion carries. Okay, now Hank.
Now you're up.
Can you pull up those slides for review? And sorry, one piece. We'll go through this fairly quickly. You've all seen this. We've been taking you through the process through this for several months now. But let me just, so we've packaged this up. This is indeed a draft. In fact, today we learned we were missing one goal, and I've added that goal back in, a new goal in here. That makes a lot of sense. But it's not in this packet. This will be revised in the new goal, and it'll be drilled down with the tactics. But I'll explain what that is here in just a minute. This package goes in a little bit, maybe it's a little bit different than what you've seen in strategic plans in the past. It starts off because we think the strategic plan should be made public. And we think a lot of our members don't know our history, and a lot of our members don't know where we're going and what we do. So when you go through this package, you'll see there's a who we are section, and it certainly addresses how we got started, addresses Mr. Simon and what his dream was and what's happened with it. But more importantly, we start to address the question who we are going forward. And what we are emphasizing through the entire strategic plan, and that's not just for staff, that's for the board, it's for all the volunteer committees, it's for everybody who's representing and supporting this community, that we collectively and individually, we own every member's experience. That's what's being spoken very clearly to all the staff, and the staff are embracing it. I challenge the board and all of our committees to think the same way. And so we're also have come up with what we believe is our brand, which is at the forefront of our community's future. And with that, we have put together what we call decision pillars. And these 3 pillars are based around several key things we all believe and have heard, and the feedback we've gotten from all of our research indicates are important to Restonians. We are first and foremost about preservation. Preserve what is at the heart of Reston. And we need to do a better job at that. And I'll show that where that last goal we're adding, we'll start to address that. We are community inspired. What that means is we work for the community. We need to do what the community asks us to do. And that's also addressed in this plan. And we need to be value focused. What does that mean? Why do we even exist? We exist to bring value to this community in multiple ways, including making certain that we continue to keep their home investments at a premium rate, continue to grow. So those are the 3 main pillars that go into this plan. Our strategy roadmap focuses around 5 key areas: people, facilities, how we communicate, activities, and our homeowners. So as you've seen in the budget, what we've emphasized in the budget, what we're emphasizing as we go through our goals is focus on our people, to inspire and educate our members, and to own the customer's experience. And that is not just staff, that is all of us in this room, and including all of our committees. We need to focus on our facilities, and need to look at how we improve them, how to repurpose them, and are there additional facilities that we need to build to renew Reston, Because Larry, I think the other day shared with me, and I think he shared with many of us, the last new amenity that Reston has received is 20 years old.
25.
I'm not talking about the lake house. I'm not talking about something we purchased. I'm talking about something new. Lake Thoreau Pool is 40 years old. I think.
39.
So, Lake Thoreau, I'm sorry. So we have not added in 25 years anything new. What has happened in our community in 25 years? What has been the opinion of this community about Reston Association over the last 25 years? I just asked the question. So we also need to look at activities. And this strategy looks at initiating activities the community wants. Not just generating non-assessment revenue, but that's important and critical, but what activities the community wants. We need to evolve our communication channels to do a better education of our customers, our members, because when I've been here going around the last year, most of our members don't even know what we do. They don't fully grasp it. They don't understand why we can't stop all the development. And we're not doing a very good job explaining that. So we need to do that as well. And obviously the homeowners, explore ways to improve the design review process and improve ways that we preserve and increase homeowners' values. It is not a user-friendly experience. And the strategic plan is looking at ways to address that as well. Any business looks, where it's going to operate, and what I call it here, how do we play, where are we going to play, and how do we win? So over the next 3 years is not a long time. The strategic plan is for 3 years. And so what we're focusing in with this strategy is optimizing our existing products, services, and programs for our existing members and customers. It's really not looking to go outside, that's stretching. However, we also need to look at where we can grow. So a small part of what we're going to be doing in the strategic plan is looking at that next box, the adjacent box where we might be able to go. Fiscal, this board, all of you are going to be heavily involved in that. But we are focused on maximizing our core. The other thing that we're looking at, this is a really important slide. I think all of us hear a lot of the naysayers, a lot of people telling us that we're not doing a good job. This is from the most recent survey. This was done with over 1,600 respondents of both people that live and own property in Reston. 73% of them said we do an excellent to good job. 4% basically say we do a poor job. 9% say we don't do very well. The critical piece here is 14% were indifferent. So what this plan focuses on is making sure that we maintain the excellent and good feelings, and we're going to focus on that indifferent group. Because it's kind of hard to change a naysayer. But we have 14% of the population who kind of are indifferent. That's the growth opportunity for us over the next 3 years when it comes to how we improve how our members feel about us and look for us. So we're looking to sustain where we are in the excellent to good, and we're looking to enhance those folks that are indifferent by changing some of the things that we do and how we operate. The other thing that's also important is you'll see on the 4th, you'll see much more detail than I'm going to show you right now. December the 4th at 7 o'clock, that's when they're going to be presenting all of this material. We have some primary weaknesses. These weaknesses are identified by what our customers, our members say are important and how we're actually performing to them based on their knowledge. So the left hand where it says important, those all in green, that's what our members are saying we want. The brand performance column is what we're actually doing in these 3 items. They are easy to work with. We're not scoring very well there. The staff resolves problems well. We're not doing very well there. They're incredibly responsive when they are incredibly responsive when a service or amenity needs attention. Again, this is important to our members. We're not doing very, very well there. The blame for this cannot sit just with staff. It sits with the complexities and some of the systems we've put in place that create roadblocks. Just going to share that, put that out there. It is not just staff not doing their job, because the bottom one, number 8, is it's a prime strength that they grade us really high on. We, collectively, I think all of us in this room, I think that witnessed that here tonight, they truly care about the people who live in Reston, and we score very well on that. So I think some of the primary weaknesses cannot be blamed on an individual or a staff or it's blamed on our systems. It's what my assessment. So, as we look to this, I believe that Reston Association has fallen into the natural tendency of all organizations to age. To reverse this, Reston must begin to emphasize certain things. Growth through collaboration, embracing the use of teams, empowering staff, removing red tape, simplifying systems, including internal operations and external members' focuses, addressing internal members' focuses, increase educational programs for staff and members, and introducing improved information and IT systems. And I'll just put these questions out there for you. I'm not looking for answers, but one of the renowned economists in the world has put a series of these questions together to ask about your organization, whether we're in a growth or decline mode. And there's gray areas here. There's no right or wrong answer here. But is Reston Association building momentum or are running under inertia? Is Reston Association's success coming from seeking calculated risks, or is Reston Association's success coming from avoiding risks? Does Reston Association allow everything, permit everything unless expressly forbidden, or does everything be forbidden unless expressly permitted? Is power in Reston with those who produce programs, products, and services, or is power with accounting and finance? Are problems viewed as opportunities, or opportunities are viewed as problems? And is in Reston Association, is management in control of systems, or are systems in control of management? Those are questions you should all ask yourselves. I certainly have asked myself, and I certainly have some of the answers for myself. But if we just go, that's all going into this strategic plan. And as I shared earlier, we have drilled down into very, very specific tactics that go to every department. For the purpose of the board, we thought it was important to share goals, objectives, and key performance indicators. We can, at any time, drill down to every tactic that every staff member is responsible for. And the way it works in our system is every line staff will know exactly what your tactic is. That's how they will be judged at the end of the year, based on their performance. So let's go into the first goal. Reston Association's source for annual revenue are growing and becoming more diverse with a focus on non-assessment income growth. Reston Association is viewed as a workplace of choice by current and potential employees. And the reason this is in there is because to achieve top customer satisfaction, RA must retain and recruit top quality staff. Reston Association has a clear, strong, and compelling external community presence. Reston Association will strive to preserve and increase homeowner property values. As an organization, Reston Association focuses on innovation and outstanding customer relationships and management. Number 6, the Reston community has pride in Reston Association. And number 7, Reston Association's facilities, programs, and services are aligned with members' needs and wants, are supported by sustainable business practices, and are in coordination with the organization's financial capacity. These are all the ones you have in your plan. And as I said, you go down, you can drill through the goals, the objectives, and the KPIs. If you want to drill down into the tactics, we will do it. The one that we have to build out, and it was a right suggestion, is number 8. Reston Association embraces its aspiration to be at the forefront of our community future by actively collaborating with RA members and community groups and taking firm steps to engage Fairfax County officials and developers to ensure that county land use policies, ordinances, and individual development are consistent with the Reston Master Plan. This needs to be built out. And we will, before you vote, and you'll have a copy of how we build this out, and before you vote in December. This is really just information. Any comments or any suggestions you want to give us to improve this, we will do it. I believe the board member in the meeting in December is the 19th. So this will be brought to your attention. The final draft will be brought, with all your input, will be brought to you all at the 19th for approval.
Yes, it's in the box, without number 8.
Right.
Number 8 is not in the Dropbox.
Number 8 is not in your packet. Again, it was shared with us as an important goal that had, by one of the members of the board who reviewed this. If you remember, this was sent out
Couple of
a
weeks
week or
ago.
so ago.
Yep.
And so we got some feedback as that we needed to add one more goal. We thought it was the right goal to add. If you all don't agree with it, that's the time you can share with me, or we can discuss it at the time we approve this plan in December.
Absolutely agree with it.
Thank you, Hank.
Thank you.
I just want to note, I think this is in the board's Dropbox, the presentation.
This presentation.
Oh, you know what? I'm staring at it. Of course it's in the Dropbox.
Well, I
Yes.
don't
Well,
know
it
if
wasn't
everybody
in the
was aware of
packet.
that, they got pinged when I put it in there this
Yeah,
afternoon.
this afternoon it went in.
Oh,
So it is in there.
yeah, okay.
It's in the packet in different form in the narrative, the write-up.
Not number 8.
Number 8 is not there. No.
Right.
No, but the rest is. I'm sorry, what's that?
She asked if
Yes.
Well, you have to do your KPIs and whatnot before you can put it out there.
Right.
Right.
We will get that wrapped up
And
probably
that will
after
go-
Thanksgiving.
That will go to governance on December 5th
Yes.
for them to approve for it to come.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Director Carr.
.30 in the PM.
Seriously?
Madam President, I move to adjourn.
Second. Thank you all for your time and attention this evening.
Got to vote.
Oh, ayes. Keep forgetting.
Aye.
Noes. Motion carries.
Perfect.